Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. And each week, we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry, and today we're lucky enough to have a remarkable guest joining us, Bertrand Charpentier. We went with the English pronunciation on that. We did try the French, but it just wasn't working, was it? So we had to go with the English one, so forgive me for that. And he is the founder, president, and chief scientist at Pruna AI. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We know you're very busy, so we do appreciate that. For people who don't know you or your company, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the company that you work at?
I'm co-founder of Pruna AI, and what we do with Pruna AI is actually we observe that there is one important problem, which is the compute that is necessary to run AI models. And it requires a lot of compute. And to just observe this, the key number that I usually give is if everyone in Germany would generate 5 pages with ChatGPT, then you would need 2 nuclear plants working all the time to just fuel ChatGPT in terms of energy. So you can see that it's a lot of energy. And that's why it's important to compress the models and to make them smaller, faster, cheaper, and also greener as a consequence. So this is really what we do with Puna. We compress models a bit like people zip images, but we compress more AI models instead and make them just more efficient.
Was that the problem that inspired you to start Pruna AI, or was it a different problem that you were trying to start solving?
So it's a very good question. So actually, in terms of background, what I did before I did my PhD at TUM, so Technical University of Munich, where I was studying slightly different topics about reliability of AI models. So trying to make sure that models are not too confident in their predictions and do not do bad decisions. And one problem with that type of model is that usually you require way more compute to make these models run. So compute is a very important problem in this case. And this is something that I observed also when doing research papers. In average, just to reproduce one of my paper once, it was $10K, which is a lot just for a research paper. And so it made it obvious that it's important to make AI models more efficient for research. But then when looking a bit more, actually, also for companies, like a lot of models, they actually spent like $100,000s per month. And that's why it's important also for companies to compress the models to make them cheaper to run.
I'm really interested in learning about how you became like a founder. Were you always going to be an entrepreneur? Was it something that you had in your mind when you were at university, or was it just like happenstance? You accidentally just came into it.
I think it was not an accident, but also I was not like thinking about it since I'm 4 years old, let's say. So it was maybe in the back of my mind, like just seeing like how interesting it could be to push an idea from the idea concept to the very end. And the research that I did before was really like the best path so that I can first become like a very expert in this domain, and then also understand fully kind of all the problems that are involved in AI, for example, or machine learning, as we would say, and then see how to push it fully after the PhD, to the industry. But I think this idea of being entrepreneurs came slowly with time by doing studies, by doing research. Then you realize, okay, there is one key problem that I want to follow.
So you mentioned you're a co-founder there. How important was networking, first of all? And what influence did that have on you in the early stages of Pruna AI?
So that's very interesting. So I think networking is definitely important, but maybe I'm a bit an exception in terms of how much I had to network to find my co-founders, because my co-founders were like Stefan Gunnemann, who was my PhD supervisor, John Rashwan, that was one of my students during my PhD, and Ryan Knight-Massey, that I studied with during when I was 20. And so I kind of found all of them and convinced them, okay, this is an important topic to work on. And they were really motivated, and then like made the co-founding team like this.
You were almost
So
like pre-packaged, weren't you?
Yes, exactly. So then it was like a passive networking, not really active and having to join event, but just being really interested about what people say during the whole, studies, during the whole research I did.
So, how would you like describe Pruna AI's like core offering, say to someone without a technical background?
One thing we provide, I like the analogy with zipping images, because in the end, what we do is we offer a software. So this is kind of a lot of algorithm that takes something as an input and compress it to give it a compressed version of this input. So for images, you can take an image, zip it, and then it's a small image that you can send via email and so on. But in our case, it's really like people, like companies, come with a lot of models that they might be interested to work with. It can be LLMs, it can be image generation, but this can take a lot of time to run. For example, for image generation, like if you want a very good high quality image, it can take 20 seconds to generate one image. Then what we offer to the company is we offer the package that can just compress this model, and then it will output a new model that, instead of taking 20 seconds, will take just 3 seconds to generate the image. So we really offer like this packaging of like how to compress models, and then it's very easy for the companies to do it themselves for all of their models. There are kind of two benefits, like efficiency gains for the models and productivity gains for the users of the model.
So, are you kind of building on existing LLMs, or are you developing like proprietary models?
So actually, we do not really develop new models. We really develop technique to process existing models. So, for example, a key example I could give is, maybe Hugging Face, which is like one big company that kind of has a very long list of models, and I think they have 1 million models. And what we try to do to show that we can process all these models very efficiently, I was just kind of taking automatically all the models that appears on Hugging Face and compressing them, processing them with our package. And then we compressed our 10,000 models to show that indeed we can scale and compress all the models that exist.
So what kind of data challenges did you face when you first started developing Pruna AI's capabilities?
So data challenges, I think we are quite, lucky with this, because we don't need a lot of data to make compression working, because we just offer this software to companies, and if they have some data, they can give the data to the software, run it on premise, and they don't have to share the data with us. So it's not a data problem for us. We just have to make sure that the compression works well, and then companies, if they want to use their data to make the compression even better, it would work. It would work on their side. So we don't have a lot of data problems, and this is something which is quite rare, I think, in AI universe, because usually data is a key problem to make things working.
Like, how do you ensure with the compression that the data is reliable and can be applied in real world like use cases?
So what we make sure is, usually what people can think of is, after compressing your model, you can think, okay, maybe you will have a drop in terms of quality of what the model will generate. And that's why evaluation is very important, to prove and convince people that the quality does not drop. So unfortunately, evaluation is also a very big problem in AI, or fortunately, I don't know. And that's why usually what is really interesting is to have like a lot of different evaluation metrics. So in the research, you can find a lot of potential metrics that are interesting. And the idea is that one is never enough. So the best is to have a lot of evaluation metrics to represent different dimensions of what we mean by quality. If you think about an image, like the quality of an image can be, the details, but it can be also the style, it can be some other things. So we have like a lot of evaluation metrics to evaluate all this aspect of the quality. So that's how we manage like the quality problem.
Sounds interesting. What kind of like use cases are your customers using it for? Can you give us some examples?
So the key use cases in generative AI, the main models are LLMs and image generation at the moment, and maybe a bit of video generation as well. So these are really like the key models that we tackle. And usually, for example, our customers, for example, they want to generate images that would be assets, like on social media, on that kind of things. So they use these models and generate, sometimes 5 million images per day. And so the cost can be very big. If you generate 5 million images per day, actually you can spend millions in terms of compute per month. So that's why it's very important for them to compress the models so that they can save a lot of money. If you make the models 2 times faster, then you will save half of the bill and also half of the energy as a consequence, which is quite nice.
So responsibility and data ethics, like how do you approach ethical AI development and usage at Pruna AI?
That's a very good question. I think so there are a lot of even philosophical problems about AI. And we cannot tackle all of them at once, but we started with one of them, which is kind of sustainability and efficiency. And but there are also some others which are, for example, reliability. Also, that's why I did my PhD on this topic, right? So why we started with sustainability is because first companies, what they want first is kind of making profit and have like with the models they deploy, and it's profit is one thing, but another side of it is that AI, if you will look a bit at the numbers, it makes a lot of it wastes a lot of energy, a lot of environmental resources to run. So one thing that was important is kind of to incentivize companies to push AI in the right direction. And one way to do this is to make models more efficient. Because when you make models more efficient, it's good for the business. You spend less compute and less, so it costs less money. But also it's good for environmental resources because you spend less compute. It means less energy, less hardware consumption, and so on. So this is kind of the first problem that we try to tackle, align the business, incentives with environmental incentives, and so that also all these models, they are accessible for as many people as possible, and not only for big tech that can spend millions of dollars, in new AI models.
So you're based currently in Europe at the moment. Are there any specific advantages to being based in Europe when developing like AI startups?
So I think there are a couple of advantages. One of them is, of course, that we have very good research. Actually, we tend to think, okay, US university are the best, but in terms of research, Europe is very productive, and we have a lot of talents there. So it's very, very nice to work with very smart people making like the most novel things. So the research and quality of research is very important. And also in terms of, as a founder, you have also to care about like how much does it cost to hire someone in this country or in another country. And the market in terms of hiring talents is also a bit easier in Europe compared to the US, where every time you have to pay, very, very, very high salaries, which are sometimes 3 times higher compared to Europe. So these are like some key advantages. And that was interesting that recently, actually, even OpenAI, that is like kind of a US company, decided actually to move also to Europe and also in Munich, where we are also with Puna. And exactly because also of these reasons, they want to have access also to all the talents, the network we have in Europe, so that they can just work with European minds.
So it's great to hear about the advantages. So I suppose my next question might obviously be, what are the disadvantages?
I think I can give one which is easy, is like in terms of administration at Puna, we are like a company that we have really like a European mindset, because we have like one office in Munich and one in Paris, so in both France and Germany. And something that can be difficult is when working in different countries to handle on administration tasks. Whenever you want to work in a new companies, it requires a lot of, work with lawyers and so on to make it work properly and everything is legally okay. And I think it's becoming better. I have seen that there will be new plans to have like a new way to create companies that is European based, but it's still something that has been a bit, difficult and take time and probably can be improved, I would say, in the future.
We've talked about the past and we've talked about the present. So let's go to the future. Where do you see the AI field heading like over the next few years? And how does your company fit into that vision?
Okay, we can do a lot of, predictions. I can give maybe one or two. So One of them would be, so far, large companies have done a lot of very, very large models and spending even, more compute to train very large models, which are state of the art on all possible tasks you can find on the internet. But something I could really foresee is like people will come more and more on small specialized models. Because in most cases, you don't need to have a model that is able to solve all the tasks, but you probably just need like one model that can solve like a specific task you're interested in. For example, if you think of a doctor, you do not need to have an LLM that solves the US presidents, I don't know, for example, but it's better that the model is specialized on, all medical topics. So that's why I think there is even like a competitive advantage for the models to just specialize on this specific or on some specific task, and then spend the compute on what matters rather than solving all possible questions at the same time.
Are there any like emerging technologies out there that you're especially excited about? Like, for example, like multimodal models or like federated learning, something like that?
I think there are a lot of interesting technologies and research that could be nice to mention here. I think something I can say about this is I feel research is a bit cyclic and technology is a bit cyclic as well. So when we look at papers right now, we usually take some concepts that are very old and show how they can work at scale with machine learning. And we can see this as well for LLMs and image generation models. So one thing that is used for LLMs is we use a lot of autoregressive models. So this is like almost 95% of the models, they are called autoregressive. But for image generation models, we use some other technique, which is called diffusion models. And now actually we observe that we kind of switch. So image generation models go to autoregressive models, for example, with the latest models from OpenAI for image generation. And now also LLMs, they start to be diffusion models. So you might have heard of Inception Labs, for example. They create like diffusion LLMs that are faster but are based on some other technology. So it's interesting how, there is not really something very new, but how you combine all the existing ideas together makes things work nicely.
Yeah, it's very exciting for the future to see what's coming up on the horizon.
Yeah.
If you could go back and talk to yourself before starting Pruna AI, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
What I would do differently, or what advice I could give to myself?
Exactly.
Probably I would try to prepare even more, to every individual steps that I've been doing. And something I think that would be very important would be to manage to have a clear view on all the possible tasks that we have to do as a co-founder. And we are probably not enough prepared, but I'm not sure if I would give this advice, because in any case, I would just not be prepared. You just have to go in and start and see how things go on. But there are definitely some topics that are hard to handle. Maybe discuss more with people with same experience in having like first research and then founder experience. I think would be one.
Okay, so that's advice that you kind of give to yourself. What would you give to people watching this? Maybe young entrepreneurs, people just getting in the field. What do you think that they should know before they jump in?
There are multiple things. So as I said before, it's important just to start and see how things evolve so that you get into the momentum of working for a startup. You know what are the problems. And another thing I think that would be important is to manage to keep always like some focus time, a couple of hours. I don't know. I would say it would be nice to have it a couple of hours per day, but at least per week, I would say would be very nice. Just very focused time where you can really think all the aspect of you or of the problems you have to solve without having too much, notifications from all the aspects. Because at some point when things starts to work a bit, you have a lot of opportunities, and it's important to kind of have the time to refocus and think, okay, this is an important problem I have to think of. Let's take 2 hours just to think about this problem and only this problem.
Perfect. Great advice. Bertrand, I just want to thank you again so much for taking time to talk with me today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Barry.
That was Bertrand Charpentier, founder, president, and chief scientist at Pruna AI.